The summer heat was relentless, a suffocating blanket that pressed down on Melissa Rodriguez's suburban neighborhood like an iron. Her backyard pool, once a source of joy and respite, had become nothing more than a moldering monument to 5 years of neighborhood drama, passive-aggressive notes, and Karen Thompson's incessant complaints. Melissa stood at the kitchen window, her hands wrapped around a cooling mug of coffee, staring at the algae-filled water that had long since transformed from a crystal blue oasis to a murky green nightmare. The pool liner was torn in multiple places, the deck was warped and splintering, and the entire structure screamed of neglect. But it wasn't just time and weather that had destroyed this backyard centerpiece. It was her nightmare of a neighbor. Karen Thompson, the self-appointed neighborhood washaw, had made Melissa's life a living hell since she and her family had moved into the quiet cul-de-sac 5 years ago. It started with small things. Anonymous complaints to the homeowners association about the height of her grass, the color of her mailbox, the way her kids' bikes occasionally leaned against the front fence. But the pool had become the ultimate battleground. 3 years ago, when Melissa first installed the above-ground pool, Karen had immediately begun her crusade. The complaints were relentless. The pool was too close to the property line. The splashing was too loud. The children's laughter was disruptive to the neighborhood's tranquility. Each complaint was meticulously documented, each interaction a calculated attempt to wear Melissa down. But Melissa Rodriguez was not someone who broke easily. A first-generation American, daughter of Mexican immigrants who had worked tirelessly to provide her with opportunities, Melissa had learned resilience from her parents. She was a successful marketing executive, a mother of 2 energetic children, and absolutely determined not to let Karen's petty vendetta destroy her family's happiness. The final straw came 3 weeks ago. Melissa had been working from home, preparing for a critical client presentation, when the first official notice arrived. The homeowners association, clearly influenced by Karen's persistent complaints, was citing her for multiple pool violations. The pool needed to be either brought up to code, which would cost thousands of dollars, or removed entirely. Her children, Miguel and Sofia, had looked at her with confusion and disappointment. This pool had been their summer sanctuary, their place of joy and family memories. They'd spent countless afternoons splashing, playing Marco Polo, and creating memories that would last a lifetime. But memories didn't pay HOA fines. With a deep breath, Melissa had made her decision. If they couldn't enjoy the pool, no one would. She would take it out herself on her own terms before the HOA could squeeze another penny from her or attempt to humiliate her further. The next Saturday morning, she woke up at dawn. Her husband, Carlos, looked at her with a mixture of confusion and support. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, watching her pull on her oldest work clothes and grab a collection of tools from the garage. "Absolutely," Melissa responded, her voice steady and determined. What Karen, the HOA, didn't know was that Melissa wasn't just a marketing executive. Before her corporate career, she had worked summers during college doing construction and landscaping. She knew her way around tools, understood structural demolition, and wasn't afraid of hard work. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the neighborhood, Melissa began her methodical destruction of the pool. Each cut of the liner, each loosened bolt was an act of defiance. She would not be bullied. She would not be controlled. Little did she know, Karen was watching from her perfectly manicured front window, her smartphone already in hand, ready to document what she believed would be Melissa's greatest mistake. The neighborhood was about to witness a showdown years in the making, and Karen had no idea what was coming. By mid-morning, Melissa had transformed from a suburban professional into a demolition expert. The pool was coming apart piece by piece, her movements calculated and precise. The metal frame creaked and groaned, surrendering to her determined assault. Sweat glistened on her forehead, her old college work gloves protecting hands that were more accustomed to typing reports than wielding power tools. Carlos had brought her water and occasionally checked on her progress, shaking his head with a mixture of admiration and mild concern. "You're really going all in on this," he remarked, offering her a cold bottle of water. Melissa wiped her brow. "This isn't just about a pool anymore. This is about standing up to bullies who think they can control everything." Across the street, Karen Thompson's curtains twitched. She had been watching the entire demolition with increasing agitation. The smartphone in her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the mounting rage of someone who was about to lose control of the situation she had meticulously orchestrated. At precisely 11:37 a.m., Karen made her move. The first sign of trouble was the sound of approaching sirens. Melissa didn't stop her work. If anything, she worked with even more intensity, each swing of her sledgehammer a statement of defiance. 2 police cruisers pulled up, their lights spinning but sirens mercifully silenced. 2 officers stepped out, a younger Hispanic officer who looked slightly uncomfortable and an older white officer with the weathered look of someone who had seen it all. "Ma'am," the older officer called out, "we've received a complaint about unauthorized demolition." Melissa turned, her work gloves covered in grime, a challenging smile playing on her lips. Behind the officers, Karen stood on her perfectly manicured lawn, arms crossed, a look of triumphant vindication spread across her face. "Everything is completely legal," Melissa responded calmly. "This is my property, and I'm removing a pool that the HOA has demanded be brought up to code or removed. I'm choosing to remove it." The younger officer began to look through the paperwork Karen had clearly prepared. Demolition permits, HOA violation notices, property line diagrams. Karen had come prepared for war. But Melissa was always 3 steps ahead. From inside the house, Carlos emerged with a folder of his own. Years of dealing with Karen had taught them to always be prepared. The HOA violation notice, their own property survey showing they were well within their rights, and most importantly, a detailed email chain with the HOA board approving their pool removal plan. The older officer, who had seen his share of neighborhood disputes, looked between Melissa, the pile of pool debris, and Karen's expectant face. Something in his experienced eyes suggested he had dealt with this type of situation many times before. Karen's moment of triumph was about to become something entirely different. The younger officer leafed through the documents, his initial stern expression softening. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "it appears the homeowner is well within her rights to remove the pool." Karen's face began to change. The triumphant smile melted, replaced first by confusion, then by a growing realization that her carefully laid plan was unraveling. Melissa continued her work, each piece of the pool coming apart not just as a physical demolition, but as a metaphorical dismantling of Karen's attempt to control her life. The neighborhood watched, some through windows, some from driveways, all witnessing a moment that was about to become local legend. And Karen was about to learn that picking a fight with the wrong neighbor could be a very expensive mistake. The police cruisers had long since departed, leaving behind a neighborhood buzzing with speculation. Melissa continued her methodical pool demolition, each swing of her tool now infused with a newfound sense of vindication. Carlos brought her lunch, tortas stuffed with carnitas, a reminder of her family's culinary heritage, and watched as she worked. "You know this isn't over," he said between bites. It wasn't a warning, but a statement of fact. Melissa knew exactly what he meant. Karen Thompson was not the type to accept defeat gracefully. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight painted the suburban sky in hues of orange and pink, Melissa discovered the first salvo of Karen's counterattack. A certified letter waited in the mailbox, its official-looking envelope practically vibrating with potential threat. The letter had belonged to Thompson & Associates Legal Services, Karen's husband's law firm. Richard Thompson, a local attorney with a reputation for being more bark than bite, had apparently decided to enter the fray. The letter was a masterpiece of legal posturing. It claimed that Melissa's pool removal was causing significant environmental disruption and potentially compromising neighborhood property values. There were vague references to potential groundwater contamination, drainage issues, and something about unauthorized landscape modification. Miguel and Sofia, who had been listening intently, exchanged knowing glances. They knew their mother well enough to understand that this was far from over. The next morning, Melissa took her counteroffensive to social media. With surgical precision, she documented the entire pool removal process. Timestamp photos showed her working diligently, the approved HOA permits clearly visible. She posted a video walkthrough explaining the removal, complete with her professional demeanor and calm explanation of the facts. The local neighborhood Facebook group, a digital battleground of suburban drama, erupted. Some neighbors sided with Karen, posting comments about property values and neighborhood aesthetics. But many more rallied behind Melissa. They knew her story. They remembered the countless petty complaints, the constant harassment, the way Karen had tried to control every aspect of the neighborhood's appearance. Screenshots of Karen's previous complaints began to surface. Old messages where she had nitpicked everything from fence heights to the color of outdoor furniture became viral content. The narrative was shifting and not in Karen's favor. Richard Thompson's law firm began receiving calls, not from potential clients, but from people mocking their heavy-handed approach. Local social media groups shared memes. Screenshots of the legal letter became a joke, passed around with increasing hilarity. But Melissa wasn't laughing. She knew Karen would not go down without a fight. The HOA board, which had previously been swayed by Karen's persistent complaints, now found themselves in an uncomfortable position. Melissa had followed every single rule. Her documentation was impeccable. The pool removal was completely legal. As the week progressed, tension in the neighborhood became palpable. Whispered conversations happened over hedges. Neighbors who had previously avoided taking sides now began to speak up. Karen's usual morning walks became a gauntlet of side-eye glances and barely concealed snickers. The power she had wielded for years was rapidly eroding. What Karen didn't know was that Melissa was just getting started. The pool was gone, but the real battle was about to begin. And in the Rodriguez household, strategy was being carefully planned over dinner, with Miguel and Sofia acting as impromptu legal advisors, their eyes sparkling with the excitement of watching their mother prepare her next move. The suburban battlefield was set. Karen had no idea what was coming next. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in suburban psychological warfare. Melissa, true to her marketing background, understood the power of narrative and perception better than anyone in the neighborhood. While Karen attempted to salvage her reputation through increasingly desperate tactics, Melissa remained coolly strategic. It started with the landscaping. Where the pool once stood, Melissa transformed the space into a breathtaking native garden. Local landscapers worked meticulously, creating a xeriscaped wonderland that was not just beautiful but environmentally responsible. Native wildflowers bloomed in carefully arranged patterns. Drought-resistant plants created a micro-ecosystem that attracted local butterflies and birds. The neighborhood began to take notice. Karen's initial attempts to criticize the new landscape fell flat. Her complaints about unauthorized landscaping were quickly shut down by local gardening enthusiasts who were impressed by the ecological design. Carlos, with his background in environmental engineering, had helped Melissa design a landscape that was both stunning and scientifically sound. But the real twist was yet to come. A local news station caught wind of the story. What they thought would be a simple piece about a neighborhood dispute turned into something entirely different. The reporter, Maria Gonzalez, was known for her investigative approach, and she saw something more in Melissa's story. The segment aired on a Thursday evening, leading the local news broadcast. A story of resilience. How one neighborhood stood up to bullying, read the headline. The piece wasn't just about the pool removal, it was about Karen's years of systematic harassment. Interviews with other neighbors revealed a pattern of behavior that went far beyond simple HOA complaints. One elderly neighbor, Martha Collins, finally spoke out. Karen has been terrorizing this neighborhood for years, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Nobody had the courage to stand up to her before Melissa. The segment revealed something even more shocking. Richard Thompson's law firm had a history of using legal intimidation tactics against residents who didn't conform to Karen's vision of the perfect neighborhood. Old complaints, previous legal threats, all were brought to light. Social media exploded. The video went viral locally, then regionally. People began sharing stories of similar experiences with neighborhood bullies. Melissa became an unexpected symbol of resistance against petty authoritarianism. Karen's reaction was catastrophic. Instead of laying low, she doubled down. A series of increasingly unhinged social media posts attempted to discredit Melissa, Carlos, and anyone who supported them. But each post only added fuel to the fire, making her look more unstable and vindictive. The HOA board, which had previously been Karen's personal playground, now distanced themselves. Emergency meetings were called. Richard Thompson found himself fielding uncomfortable questions about his wife's behavior and his firm's legal practices. Miguel and Sofia watched their mother with a mixture of pride and amusement. Melissa had turned what could have been a simple neighborhood dispute into a powerful statement about community, resilience, and standing up to bullies. But Karen wasn't finished, and Melissa knew it. The final act of this suburban drama was yet to be played out, and everyone in the neighborhood was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The pool was gone, but the real battle was just beginning.